Welcome to a deep dive into the reign and legacy of Akbar the Great, the Mughal emperor who ruled over a large part of India back in the 16th century.
Yeah.
We're using a really interesting mix of sources for this deep dive.
Okay.
We've got historical texts
Yes.
like the Akbarnama,
Right.
Tabaqat-i Akbari,
Yeah.
but we're also going to be looking at parts of a historical novel
Interesting.
to try to get like a more vibrant picture of what his world was actually like.
Oh, yeah. That's a great approach, I think.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about 16th century India,
Okay.
a time of immense change,
Yeah.
cultural fusion,
Mm-hmm.
and right at the center of all of this
Right.
is this fascinating Emperor Akbar.
Yeah.
One thing that really stood out to me when I was reading about him was his revenue system.
Oh, yeah.
He introduced this innovative system called wazifa,
Okay.
and it replaced all of these like arbitrary taxes that had been in place before, and it shifted to a much more organized
Right.
and I think fairer approach.
It really showcases his vision, I think,
Yeah.
for a just and prosperous society. It
Yeah.
seems like instead of relying on all these like unpredictable levies that they had before,
Right.
he implemented this much more structured system for collecting land revenue.
Mm-hmm.
It was based on careful land assessments.
Okay.
They even considered like periods when the land lay fallow,
Oh, wow.
you know?
That's interesting.
Just a very thoughtful approach.
Yeah, I was amazed to learn that just in 1596 alone,
Wow.
Akbar's revenue from his 15 provinces was a massive amount.
Wow, that's incredible.
And that's taking into account the fact that obviously his empire had different boundaries
Right.
than modern-day India does.
Yeah.
But it still just highlights the incredible economic strength that he was able to achieve.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about collecting taxes either.
Right.
He seemed to be genuinely invested in the well-being of his subjects.
Right.
His initiatives, you know, like calming religious tensions and encouraging trade.
Yeah.
Those were way ahead of their time.
It's incredible.
His policies actually led to this period of peace and prosperity that was unprecedented, really.
Yeah.
And I think he became a model for rulers for centuries to come.
It's fascinating to me to think about, like, all of the sources that we have to try to piece together this story.
Yeah.
Aside from the historical texts that we've already mentioned,
Right.
there's also the account of Ralph Fitch.
Ralph Fitch.
He was the only Englishman
Wow.
to have actually visited and documented Akbar's court.
Interesting.
And this was in 1585.
Okay.
So that's a pretty unique perspective.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have the novel
Right.
that we're going to be looking at as well.
Yeah.
And that provides just a very different lens.
Right. A more personal lens
Yeah.
to view this period through.
Yeah. It's a much more intimate look, I think.
That's right. The novel introduces us to these
Yeah.
different characters,
Right.
like Siddharama, he's
Yeah.
this young man from Kashmir, and his tutor, Kuluka,
Right.
and then this really interesting, mysterious hermit named Gurupada.
Gurupada.
And through their journeys and interactions,
Wow.
we really get a much more like intimate look
Right.
at the cultural landscape of
Yeah.
16th century India.
One of the most intriguing aspects of Akbar's reign to me
Yeah.
was his approach to religion.
Uh-huh.
His embrace of religious tolerance
Mm.
was really remarkable for the time.
Yeah.
He actually invited Jesuit missionaries
Wow.
to his court.
Okay.
He engaged in like theological debates with them, even requested Christian books,
Wow.
and financed a missionary's trip to China.
He wasn't just tolerant.
Yeah.
He was actively engaging with all these different faiths.
Yeah.
You know, the historical accounts even tell us about him celebrating Christmas with a Jesuit missionary
Wow.
in Lahore.
That's amazing.
And his curiosity wasn't just limited to Christianity.
Right.
He was also really deeply interested in Hinduism and Vedic ideas.
Wow. So he was all over the place.
He even tried to create this new, more inclusive religion
Really?
called Tawhid-i-Ilah.
Tawhid-i-Ilah.
And it blended elements from all these different traditions.
Wow. That's ambitious.
It was.
Trying to harmonize
Right.
such diverse faiths into a whole new belief system.
Yeah,
Must have been incredibly challenging.
it was. And ultimately,
Mm.
he chose to limit the practice of Tawhid-i-Ilahi
Right.
to a smaller circle.
Okay.
But even attempting such a thing was remarkable
Yeah.
for a ruler of his time.
And the novel, with its characters kind of wrestling
Right.
with questions of faith and identity, really brings this complex religious landscape to life.
Yeah, it does.
There's a scene in the novel where Sita encounters Gurupada's tiger.
Oh, wow.
And he chases after it thinking it's wild, only to discover it belongs to this hermit.
Mm.
It's such a great illustration of Gurupada's
Right.
unusual calmness
Yeah.
and like connection with nature.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really sets the stage for some of the deeper philosophical discussions
Right.
about faith that unfold in the novel.
Those discussions between Siddha and Gurupada and later with Akbar himself
Right.
provide such a fascinating layer
Yeah, thanks.
to our understanding of like the intellectual and
Yeah.
spiritual atmosphere
Right.
of Akbar's era.
It wasn't just about conquest and administration.
Right.
It was also a time of
Yeah.
intense intellectual and cultural exchange,
Right.
which the novel really captures.
It makes me wonder if Akbar's religious tolerance wasn't also kind of a strategic move
Right.
to consolidate his power
Uh-huh.
over such a diverse empire.
It's possible.
The sources describe the lavishness of his court
Right.
and his son's court
Yeah.
in stark contrast
Uh-huh.
to the simple lives of many of his subjects,
Right.
like Gurupada, who actually chose a life of exile
Wow.
despite being a former king.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
It's clear that Akbar was a shrewd ruler who understood the importance of maintaining stability in his vast empire.
Right.
But the sources also point to a genuine intellectual curiosity
Right.
and this desire to find common ground
Uh-huh.
between these different belief systems.
It probably wasn't just one or the other.
Right. It was probably a very complex blend of both.
Yeah. Now that we've kind of touched on Akbar's innovative policies and like the cultural and religious landscape of his time,
Right.
let's turn to some of these other fascinating historical sources
Okay.
that illuminate his life.
All right.
The Tabaqat-i Akbari, for instance,
Yeah.
provides a really detailed account of Akbar's military campaigns and conquests.
Okay.
It highlights his brilliant strategies
Right.
and his ability to unify such a diverse army,
Interesting.
which ultimately led to the expansion of the Mughal Empire.
And let's not forget the architectural marvels that he commissioned from, the majestic forts of Agra and Lahore to the stunning Fatehpur Sikri.
Yeah.
These structures really stand as testaments to his vision and his patronage of the arts.
I am really curious
Yeah.
to learn more about these campaigns
Okay.
and the architectural wonders of his reign.
Right?
Shall we dive into those next?
Let's do that. I think these aspects of Akbar's rule
Okay.
offer a really interesting window
Right.
into his ambition, his strategic brilliance, and his artistic sensibilities.
That's cool.
Yeah. The Tabaqat-i Akbari gives us this really detailed narrative of all of his military campaigns. Starting with his early conquests in northern India.
Right.
It describes his strategic brilliance in certain battles, like the Siege of Chittorgarh, and also his skillful diplomacy in forging all of these alliances with Rajput rulers.
So it wasn't just brute force.
It wasn't...
He also knew he needed to build relationships
Exactly.
and consolidate his power through these strategic alliances.
Precisely. The Tabaqat-i Akbari really highlights how he integrated Rajput warriors into his own army, recognizing their valor and military expertise. So this not only strengthened his forces, but I think it also really fostered this sense of unity within his incredibly diverse empire.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a scene in the novel
Oh, yeah.
where Siddha, who's from Kashmir, finds himself training alongside Rajput soldiers in Akbar's army.
Interesting.
And they initially view each other with suspicion.
Right.
But then they eventually develop
Yeah.
this grudging respect for one another's skills and courage.
That scene really perfectly encapsulates Akbar's vision
Yeah.
of a unified India, where these cultural differences are kind of transcended by the shared sense of loyalty to the empire.
And speaking of cultural fusion,
Yes.
Akbar's architectural projects beautifully reflect this ideal as well.
Yes, we do.
The sources mention the grandeur
Yes.
of Fatehpur Sikri,
Okay.
his short-lived capital city.
Fatehpur Sikri is so much more than just grandeur.
Okay.
It's really a testament to his vision
Right.
of cultural synthesis.
Hmm.
The architecture there blends Islamic,
Wow.
Hindu, and Persian elements.
Wow.
So you get this really unique style that represents all of the diverse influences within his empire.
So it wasn't just like a display of power. It was also like a deliberate attempt to create this visual representation of unity and harmony among all of these different cultures.
That's exactly. And it wasn't just Fatehpur Sikri. He commissioned so many mosques, forts, palaces throughout his entire empire. Each one showcasing this remarkable blend of architectural styles.
It makes you wonder about the lives of all the artisans and architects who actually like brought these visions to life. Imagine like the cultural exchange and collaboration.
It must have been an incredible melting pot of ideas and artistic traditions.
And the spirit of cultural exchange seems like it extended beyond just architecture.
Oh, definitely.
Akbar's court was renowned for its patronage of music, literature, painting.
The sources actually mention Akbar's fascination with the arts, particularly painting. He even established a royal atelier.
Oh, wow.
And he attracted all these talented artists from across the empire and even beyond.
That's incredible.
His atelier produced some of the most exquisite miniature paintings of the Mughal era. They blended Persian and Indian techniques to create this really distinctive style. And his patronage extended to literature as well. He commissioned translations of major Hindu epics like the Mahabharata. So he was making them accessible to this much wider audience.
It's clear that he saw the arts as more than just entertainment. It was this powerful tool for promoting cultural understanding and intellectual growth within his empire.
It was a really remarkable approach.
This makes me want to kind of revisit his religious tolerance. We know that he abolished the jizya, which was a tax on non-Muslims, which was a pretty radical move for a ruler at that time.
It was groundbreaking, and it had all these significant social and economic consequences. Abolishing the jizya not only eased the burden on all of his non-Muslim subjects, but it really signaled his commitment to creating this more inclusive and equitable society.
That raises another interesting point to me about his revenue system. You know, while we've talked about the overall wealth that he was able to generate, it's important to remember that his policies weren't just about maximizing profit. He also implemented reforms to ensure that the tax burden was distributed fairly. And that his subjects, especially farmers, were protected from exploitation.
Absolutely. The sources actually describe his concern for the welfare of his people. He implemented measures to prevent corruption, regulate trade practices, provide relief during famines. All these initiatives highlight his focus on social justice alongside economic prosperity.
It's impressive how he balanced all of his like grand ambitions with this genuine desire to create a more just society.
It really challenges this traditional image of a powerful emperor who's just focused solely on territorial expansion and personal gain.
Speaking of leadership, the novel that we've been discussing really dives into the complexities of power and like the burdens of responsibility. There's a scene where Siddha observes Akbar presiding over his court, and he sees the emperor juggling countless demands, resolving disputes, making decisions that affect the lives of millions of people.
That scene really captures, I think, the weight of leadership. You know, this constant pressure to balance all of these competing interests. And this burden of making choices that inevitably have consequences, both positive and negative.
And it's not just like external pressures. The novel also explores the internal struggles of those in power. You know, remember Guru Pada's backstory? He was a king who chose to relinquish his throne to prevent a civil war and to secure his brother's future.
That's a powerful example of self-sacrifice and, you know, the difficult choices that leaders sometimes have to make.
It's a reminder that true leadership often requires putting the needs of others above your own ambitions. And it's a theme that resonates throughout history.
It does.
From ancient rulers to modern-day politicians.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder if Akbar ever faced similar dilemmas,
right,
torn between his personal desires and the greater good of his empire.
Right.
The sources mentioned his complicated relationship with his son Salim, whose rebellious nature and thirst for power caused him a lot of distress.
Despite Akbar's efforts to try to guide and mentor Salim, his son's ambitions ultimately led to conflict and rebellion. It's a reminder that even the most powerful rulers can't always control the actions of those closest to them.
And it also kind of highlights the challenges of succession.
Yes.
Which is this recurring theme in history.
It is.
Especially in powerful dynasties.
Right.
Did the sources delve into...
They do. How Akbar handled these challenges.
Yeah.
The Akbarnama, for instance, describes Akbar's attempts to try to prepare Salim for leadership. He was providing him with military training and administrative experience. But Salim's really impetuous nature and his clashes with other members of the court created this constant tension.
It must have been heartbreaking for Akbar to witness his son's rebellious streak. Despite all of his efforts to nurture him into this wise and capable ruler. It reminds me of a scene in the novel where Sita witnesses this heated argument between Akbar and Salim, and the tension between them is just palpable.
It is.
It's like such a stark contrast to the image of this harmonious court that Akbar had so carefully cultivated.
That scene really underscores the personal toll that leadership can take. You know, the emotional burdens that come with wielding such immense power. It humanizes Akbar. It reminds us that even emperors aren't immune to the complexities of family dynamics and the challenges of raising children, especially those who are destined for greatness.
It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just about grand events and sweeping pronouncements. It's also about the personal stories, the relationships, and the human struggles that shape the course of empires and leave their mark on generations to come.
Precisely. Those personal stories, I think, often provide the most compelling insights into, you know, the motivations, the complexities, and the enduring legacies of these historical figures, like Akbar the Great.
It's really incredible how these sources, both historical and fictional, come together to paint such a vivid picture of Akbar and his world.
It's a reminder that history isn't just this collection of names and dates. It's a tapestry that's woven from individual stories, personal triumphs, heartbreaks.
And Akbar's story, with all of its complexities and contradiction, is one that continues to resonate.
It does.
Centuries later. The sources also touch on something that's always fascinated me about Akbar. His genuine curiosity about the world. He surrounded himself with scholars, artists, thinkers from all these diverse backgrounds.
It was a melting pot. His court must have been this incredible melting pot of ideas and perspectives.
And this intellectual ferment wasn't limited to just like the elite.
No.
Akbar actually took steps to promote literacy and education throughout his empire. He established schools, libraries. He even encouraged the translation of important texts into different languages.
He understood the power of knowledge as this tool for progress and unity.
That's really remarkable.
It is.
It's like he was laying the groundwork for a society that valued intellectual inquiry and cultural exchange just as much as they valued military strength or economic prosperity.
Exactly.
It's striking to think about how these ideas, which we might just take for granted today, were considered radical. Even dangerous back in his time. It makes his accomplishments all the more impressive.
Absolutely. He challenged the status quo. He was embracing diversity, promoting dialogue in a world that was often defined by conflict and division. I think his reign serves as this powerful reminder that progress is possible, even in the most challenging circumstances, when leaders are willing to embrace new ideas and challenge old assumptions.
But progress doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't.
And as we've seen from the sources, even Akbar faced resistance and setbacks.
Of course.
You know, his attempts to reform the religious landscape, for example, met with opposition from traditionalists in his own court.
That's true.
And his efforts to groom Salim into a worthy successor ultimately proved unsuccessful. Salim's rebellious nature and his thirst for power led to tension, conflict.
And ultimately culminated in open rebellion.
It's a reminder that even the most visionary leaders can't always control the course of events. Human nature with its complexities and contradictions always plays a role.
It does.
And yet, despite all of these challenges, Akbar left this indelible mark on Indian history. His reign marked a period of unprecedented stability, economic growth, cultural flourishing.
His policies, his reforms, his vision of a united and tolerant India continue to inspire generations of leaders and thinkers.
So as we're wrapping up our deep dive into the life and legacy of Akbar the Great, what key takeaways would you leave our listeners with?
I think Akbar's story offers a couple of really valuable lessons. First, I think it highlights the importance of vision and ambition in driving progress. Akbar wasn't content with simply maintaining the status quo. He aimed to create a more just, prosperous, and unified society. And while he didn't achieve all of his goals, I think his ambition really propelled him to push boundaries and challenge conventional thinking.
That's a great point. And it links to, I think, another important takeaway. The power of innovation and reform. Akbar wasn't afraid to experiment with new ideas. Whether it was his revolutionary revenue system, his embrace of religious tolerance, or his patronage of the arts and sciences, he understood that progress requires adaptation and a willingness to break from tradition.
Exactly. And finally, I think Akbar's story underscores the importance of balance. He was a powerful ruler, a skilled military strategist, a shrewd administrator. But he also recognized the value of compassion, tolerance, and cultural understanding. He really sought to balance his ambition with this genuine concern for the well-being of all of his subjects.
And that balance is something that we see reflected in the novel as well. You know, the characters grapple with their own internal conflicts, trying to reconcile their personal desires with their sense of duty, their loyalty to tradition, with their yearning for change.
It's a timeless human struggle.
It is.
And I think Akbar's story, with all its complexities and contradictions, offers valuable insights into how to navigate those challenges, how to strive for greatness while remaining grounded in our shared humanity.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
Exploring the reign and legacy of Akbar the Great through historical accounts and even this fictional lens. We've seen his innovative policies, his military prowess, his cultural influence, and his unwavering pursuit of a just and unified society. But more than that, we've caught a glimpse of the man behind the legend. His struggles, his triumphs, and his enduring impact on the world.
And as you continue to explore Akbar's story, whether through further reading or even visiting some of those magnificent architectural wonders that he left behind, remember to consider the lessons that he offers. Lessons about leadership, ambition, tolerance, and the enduring power of human connection across cultures and centuries.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of Akbar the Great.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed the journey.
Yeah.
And maybe even discovered some new insights along the way.
Yeah.
We encourage you to delve deeper into the source material and continue exploring this remarkable period in history.